first and foremost, to be an effective ally, I have to educate myself. And so what that means is I need to listen, and I need to actively listen.
But also educating yourself about where we are today in the truth and reconciliation process. There is a lot happening in Indigenous communities around Canada. There's a resurgence in Indigenous cultures, so it's not just educating about the past, but educating about the present, where we are in the journey of reconciliation in Canada.
As an administrator at Sheridan, I think being an effective ally is often about taking a step back and listening and creating that space or platform for others. But sometimes it's also about stepping up and speaking out, particularly when your position or your privilege would allow you to amplify an Indigenous voice or perspective.
Open to listening and learning from the people who are willing to teach, but then also in the way you are and the way you interact, that you provide that information back.
To hear more, to understand more, to be taught more, to work together and to learn together.
What I see as an effective role as an ally is to ensure that I'm doing my due diligence in terms of sort of educating myself, and especially within the Sheridan community, I'm making sure that I am getting the word out and being an effective partner by working on collaborative initiatives and work within the network that I have and ensuring that we're taking a holistic approach in terms of whatever we can do to help.
And I think that being open and willing to learn yourself and continuous learning is very key.
And as an ally, as educators, we have a responsibility to our students to listen, to understand, to provide them with support, and provide them with the tools that are going to allow them to be successful once they leave our institution.
I think to be an effective ally, as a non-Indigenous person, I first need to learn a little bit of my history and the history from that perspective, and to understand sort of the role of Eurocentric approach to history and what influence that has had on all of our stories, but especially the story of Indigenous students.
I have to say it's quite rich when you begin to learn the history, the good part of the history and the bad part of the history. We need to know all of it. We're privileged to live in this incredible country, but we can't negate the past.
So it's important for me to be an ally and to create a safe space for all people to hear about history. It's important for me to create a safe space for Indigenous students who are in essentially a post-secondary colonial institution, so that their pathway to learning and to post-secondary education and to life in general has probably been far more difficult than most people. So it's important to tell that story and share that story and to provide an environment that's very supportive for them also.
I think so it sort of has that two-pronged approach, being inclusive, education-wise, but also being really sensitive to the experiences of those students that may be, it might be intergenerational trauma, that kind of thing.
Working with any community requires to understand their perspective, understand their story, understand the history that has brought us to this point. And a really important part of being an ally is just listening and learning from them.
I can never understand, but I can be understanding. So I think an effective ally is open to understanding what has happened before and how we can work to make a new difference going forward.
Stephen Covey, a very famous writer, framed, "Seek first to understand and then be understood."
I think it starts from an acknowledgement, a recognition of one's privilege and power. And I think that's really formative to then understanding how you support marginalized or oppressed peoples in their undertakings.
It's not just about checking assumptions, but it's also looking for unintended consequences that may be caused as a result of barriers.
But on top of that, it means a willingness to have our views of Canada, views of the world, views of ourselves changed.
Being an ally is coming out or stepping out of the passive, of recognizing one's privilege in that overall system and saying,
I have the responsibility to act.
It's not a simple thing when I think about being an ally. First, there's the task-oriented element of getting the work done, helping to foster and facilitate a community that embraces, infuses, appreciates, understands our Indigenous ways of knowing and all the things that come with that. So as an ally, I'm not only fostering or helping our community, but I'm always learning because there's so much to learn. There's so much to know, so much to understand.
And I would say above all, to develop and nurture authentic relationships that are grounded in organic engagement.
I think fundamentally that's the most important part. It's the foundation of how we build relationships and how we support each other.
And I think listening actively, asking questions, and supporting the leadership that pervades across the Indigenous communities that I've had the privilege of engaging with is really fundamental. That for me is what it means to be an ally. And it's not always easy, but it's really important, and at the end of the day, richly rewarding for me. And you hope for others too.